Hello, Sarah Sabin, Transformational Leadership Coach here in my Leading in the Modern Way video interview series. And I am very excited to be talking to today Domenica Di Lieto, who is CEO and co-founder of Emerging Communications UK. Domenica, could you introduce yourself in your own words to my audience?
Absolutely. Firstly, it's a delight to be here with you today. Thank you very much. So I'm Domenica. I'm the CEO of Emerging Communications, and we are a Chinese specialist marketing agency based here in London and in Shanghai. So I lead a team of predominantly Chinese marketers, and we help brands grow their audience and their customer base in mainland China and the world. So as long as it's China specialisms, and it's marketing and growing sales, that's what we're known for.
Perfect. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. And I
Pleasure.
think the first thing I'm actually curious about is how you niched into the Chinese market specifically.
Like 90% of entrepreneurs by accident.
Okay.
So I had a previous agency I sold in 2011, which was in a much more well-known space of e-commerce, and it was at the time when e-commerce was moving more towards Magento and Shopify. It seemed the right time to sell it, and I ended up in the China space by accident because I did an interim commercial director role for a year, and I found it fascinating, still do. And I'm somebody who gets really bored, like most CEOs, and so it changes all the time. If it's not new channels, it's audience behavior, or it's legislation, or it's geopolitical tensions, you name it. My day never turns out the way I think it's going to. And it's that constant change, that, I suppose, dynamic nature of the market that fascinates me. And so when I started, and it is 11 years ago now, in the China market, didn't speak any Chinese, knew nothing about China, but I knew how to run an agency. And that's why I was brought in for that year. But now there are specialist areas within what we do with China that I speak and I lecture on, and I write blogs on, etc. And across my agency, we've all got different specialist areas around Chinese marketing. And I find it fascinating, and I love my team, and I just love the sheer speed at which China is moving. It's good fun, really good fun, challenging, but good fun. And I'm not bored because my day never pans out the way I expect it to. There's no predictability really in my job.
That's really interesting, because what I find with a lot of entrepreneurs is they actually get bored often when the business has reached a place of stability, because they're like,
Yep.
It's a bit too comfortable now. And at that stage, they can often bring in someone to maintain and build on that growth and go off and do something else. But
Yep.
you've actually found a way to keep this constant change and unpredictability within an already established business.
Yeah, and it is unusual because there are obviously things I want to do. I've started writing about 3 books and never get a chance to finish them because I'm so busy, but it is unpredictable. I find the people in the industry amazing. Not only our competitors and suppliers and partners, but just our clients are incredible. They are very ambitious. They are really energetic, and they know that China is complex, and we are like a partnership as opposed to an agency client supplier relationship. And I just like the sheer, as I said, the speed and the fact that it's not predictable. And I think that if it is definitely very inherent in the culture of who we hire as well. If you want an easy 9 to 5 solid job, you wouldn't go and work in the China market. Let's face it. It's very, very, very fast moving. And so we have tended to create this incredible culture of amazingly passionate, bright, sassy women. And we are not intentionally, but the way it's panned out, predominantly a female organization. We've only got 2 men. It was certainly not, it's not intentional, it's not part of our recruitment policy. It's just been by accident. And it's just created this, I don't know, this wave of energy, not just within emerging comms, but also I think the whole Chinese market's really exciting space to be in right now. Yeah.
100%. And in terms of some of the challenges that you faced over the years in getting it to its current stage, I mean, I can think of many just based on what you've said so far, but if you had to pick out, say, the top 2 or 3 challenges that you had to overcome, what would they be and how did you do that?
First, most obvious one is China's a long way away. It's 8 hours ahead at the moment, 7 British summertime. We had to open a wholly owned foreign enterprise. We've got a different bank account, different entity in China, and that's what we need to do to pay people, to pay media, to pay staff. I've had to open an office. I've had to recruit people. I've had to do all of that from here. And I used to travel maybe 6 to 8 times a year to China. And of course, COVID being problem number 2 meant that we've had to do all the management and all of the setup of any new teams we've had to do entirely remotely because the borders only opened in China in January this year. As of 3 years, I haven't been to China, which is very challenging. But more importantly, my SLT team couldn't go either. So that was very challenging. And it meant we had to pivot an awful lot of what we did. I would say a challenge is obviously the language. In some ways, not being fluent in Chinese is a good thing because I run the business, I'm on the business, I'm not in it. So when I offer consultancy to clients, when I speak at events, when I write pieces of marketing, when I'm leading my teams, I can very much look down on where the problems are and fix them. I cannot get involved in minutiae because everything we do is in Mandarin and everything we do is on Chinese channels. So it does stop you tinkering, which is good. And I now understand enough Chinese to understand my team, and they'll switch between Chinese and English, but my verbal Chinese is not good enough to hold the conversation back in Chinese yet. I'm still at the reading Chinese stage and the understanding it. But it's been good for keeping me away from tinkering with the minutiae, which I would naturally do if I was given half the chance, I think. And I'd say, lastly, are all the macro things that impact China and UK and China and Europe that I have no control over. Geopolitical tensions, COVID. We've now got a cost of living crisis here. We have to employ Chinese nationals. We have a sponsorship license with the Home Office, so that has to be maintained, and we have to have people do that. So there's the whole recruitment and hiring process is more complicated. And as I said, running 2 entities and 2 companies is more complex. But that's kind of why I do it. I'd have moved on by now and started another company if it wasn't China, because I'd have been bored.
Yeah, I'm sure. But it's really interesting what you said about actually setting up a business where you couldn't get involved in the minutiae, because often there is a whole transitionary process with a founder owner to get them out of the minutiae, because it's our natural inclination. The business is your baby. How did you feel with that kind of loss of control at the beginning? I'm sure you're pretty used to it now, but was it challenging at the beginning?
I've always known my strengths and weaknesses. Even my previous agency, which I sold, I ran with my husband. He did all the delivery and the ops, and I always did the running of the business, the sales and the marketing. That is not inherently different now. So when I started the business, I brought Melody, who's my co-founder, in really early, first 6 weeks, 8 weeks. She was responsible at the beginning for the delivery of all of our work, and I was responsible for running the company. And that hasn't inherently changed. It's just in addition to Melody, I have another 5 people in my SLT team now. So HR and all the running of the business day to day here and in China is done by my MD. And then I have a client services director who's responsible for all of the delivery of client services. And I have planning director, and I have, finance director, and I have Melody on the business development side. So it's really important that I have really good people. But when we started, it was just Mel and I. And I have yet to meet a business that's successful, no matter what size it is, where you've got the founder who, if you're my sort of personality type, it's, you know, your plants, isn't it? It's your ideas people, your run at, you know, 1,000 miles an hour but don't finish anything people. You've got to have somebody who's just going to get stuff done. So I've always built my teams around me carrying on doing my strengths and basically plugging the holes I'm not very good at. So that's what I did, and I just brought those people in over time, and then they had their own teams, and that's how I built the business.
And that's a really excellent point I want to pick up on. We have a natural inclination to bring on people that are like us, but what you've described is the way to build a team. You know very well what your strengths are, you know what the gaps are, what the weaknesses are, and you fill in your team in a way where you all complement each other. And as long as you are aligned at a values level,
Yes,
then that makes a team that is very dynamic, very fast moving, and you know, as much as possible, does not have weaknesses or holes within it.
I think you're right. It doesn't make for harmony all the time, but that's a good thing, and it's something I've had to learn as a leader. I like harmony. One of my biggest strengths is conflict management, and I can make people very happy, and you know, I build relationships. My job is not the negative side of people. I'm not very good at that, but I've had to recognize that where I have weaknesses, they've got to be plugged, and that means that we will approach problems in a very different way. I will do it in a very emotive style, and they might do it in a very process-driven style. And that does mean, as a group of senior leadership team, that we don't always agree. But actually, we now have really open, honest conversations, and that values piece is so important. We all stick by our values. We recruit on our values, and as long as we're all caring about the end result, we always get there in the end. And I think it is really important that you don't have a senior leadership team that agree with what you have to say. Otherwise, I may as well do it myself, right? So they will push back, and I want them to push back all the time. And they'll say, no, I don't agree. That isn't going to work. There's a better way of doing this. And I'm also very conscious that if it's to do with process, procedure, anything about organization or parts, then I would always take advice from other people, not me anyway, because they're better at it. In just the same way that they'll come to me and they'll say, we've got a complex situation, can you help? And I'll go, of course, that's my bag, and I love it. And then I will hand away the stuff I don't want to do. So it is really, really important. But you're absolutely right. And I see so many businesses where what they've done is they have recruited their friends, their mates. They've recruited, and I'm not saying I don't get on with my team, I do, but they've recruited people that are carbon copies of themselves. And you just end up that all the bits you're bad at, nobody's doing them.
Yes.
It doesn't make for growth. It doesn't make for a very harmonious place to work. And it's not in the best interest of the staff or the clients or anybody really. But it is obviously a lot easier because you all get on. But you all get on, but nothing gets done, right?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. You might be completer finishers and everything gets done, but nothing gets started, or you might be starters and nothing gets finished. So I try and have a really well balanced team.
Yes.
Yeah.
And essentially, confrontation is not a bad thing. I'm not talking about sort of aggressive confrontation, but
No.
radical candor where you do have this disagreement. Because again, we're not going to grow or evolve if we all agree with each other all the time. And actually, you know, when we get triggered by people, there's usually a reason behind that.
Absolutely. And we've worked together a long time. My FD's today was our anniversary, 6 years with Emerging Comms. My planning director's been with us nearly 8. Yvonne's been with me 5. And so we know each other all really well. And at times we all get annoyed with each other, right? I'm highly annoying. I'm the typical, has loads of ideas and and gets distracted by the wonderful ideas,
Shiny
and people
object syndrome.
absolutely, and people are like, for God's sake, back in the room, we've got to deal with this now. But we all have respect for each other, even if we don't like each other's approaches at times, and that respect and those values are what glues you together. Because you might go, actually, I respect the way that person's doing it, because that's the way they want to do it, and we're going to get to the same place, so it doesn't really matter if that's not how I would do it. But that kind of open communication, that being honest with each other, I think is absolutely crucial. Yeah.
And obviously you've talked a little bit about how you view leadership and a leadership team working together. How do you see that kind of dynamic impacting the growth of your business?
I think, in fact, I'm speaking about this next week at an event. I think that growth is driven by relationships. Okay, so I think the relationships you have with my SLT team, the relationships I have with all of my staff, the relationships we have with our clients and with our partners and our greater stakeholders are what drives growth, because it drives trust. And if you have trusted relationships, they will refer you, they will stay with you, they will grow with you. And I've never set this company up to be a transactional relationship. I want to have long-term relationships with our clients, and I want to build value with them. I want them to grow with us. And if you do that, you will naturally grow. And I do turn down business all the time. If it's a culturally bad fit, you just know that they're not going to get on with the team, or that the team will hate working with them, or that they don't respect what we do. Any number of reasons. We have a value scorecard that we use, and sometimes it's just gut instinct. And I see some of our clients as friends. I get on with them. We have frank conversations when things aren't going well. And I'm not talking about aren't going well with us as an agency, but there might be tensions between their teams, and they might ring up for advice or whatever. China is complicated and can be challenging. But growth is driven, I think, inherently by everybody being on the same train. And that includes your clients, that includes your staff. It's everybody knowing where you're headed, being really transparent about where you are, and being transparent when the going is tough as well. It's not easy this year. We've just come out of COVID, and we're now in a situation where everybody is financially it's harder than before. And that means that you've got to have a happy workforce and happy clients, because you're on the train together. It's just the difference is that there's the track is not going as smoothly as you'd like. And I know that not everybody agrees with being totally transparent with their teams and their staff, but I really am. I'm really transparent about finances. I'm transparent about how well it's going, how well it isn't, why, what we're doing about it, what my KPIs are, what my teams are, so that we're held accountable. Because at the end of the day, I don't have a boss. So I feel that my bosses are the people that report to me, and the people that report to them, so that they know that they chose the right train and they're not going to jump off and go somewhere else. I think that's really important.
And I really like what you said about being transparent, because obviously there are different degrees of transparency, but to be transparent, you need to be vulnerable sometimes. And that also means admitting when things aren't going so well. And I like how you also link that into accountability, because, if things aren't going to plan, you all need to hold each other accountable to get past that, which your team can only do, obviously, if you're open and honest with them.
Absolutely. And it just means that everybody, it's like with anything, values should trickle down from the top. But also behavior. So if I behave in a certain way, people below me will behave in that way, and people below them will behave in that way. So if I'm not open and honest, you end up with literally cloak and dagger comments, or people having separate conversations. And we operate in a totally hybrid model, where I don't ask anybody to come into the office. I go in every Wednesday to have a SLT team meeting, and I'm client side a lot. But we don't have you work from the office. We have you can work from anywhere policy. And I've got people working at the moment in Bali. Somebody's just been working in Singapore. So they're not just working in China or London, they're all over the world. And we do that because we trust each other, and because we also know we're on the same train. And that just, I don't think today's world works unless you're open and honest. It's always going to come back and
Yes,
bite you. So yeah.
that's for sure. And it's coming back and biting a lot of people nowadays, I think.
I think you're absolutely right. And you look at some of the disruptors that have done so well, and they've all got one thing in common, and it's company culture. It's being a great place to work. It's really giving a damn about every last individual in that business, and really caring about your clients, and really wanting success for everybody, not just yourself as the founder. I just think the days of the way that businesses used to be led are long gone, and it's the teams that are being run in a very positive, fast forward way, where everybody and all the stakeholders are engaged and looked after, that are doing really well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to understand how you've invested in yourself as a leader and what steps you take to grow and evolve in your role.
I have had many coaches, and they've all been very different. And I advocate coaching and mentoring is phenomenal. I had one that was for health, because I used to not take time out for exercise or mental health, and I now meditate daily. I practice yoga daily. I do a lot of walking. But again, that has to be down. I play tennis and ski and all these things, but it has to be what you as an individual, what is going to make you calm, not what makes other people calm.
100%.
But I've also had mentors and coaches help me structure and grow a team and deal with things like conflict that I hate. And so I've had very different ones along my journey. I think that the whole growth mindset versus fixed mindset is a really important discovery for me. I don't think I necessarily grew up in a household where they knew what growth mindset was. I've had to teach myself to be that person. And I'm such a believer in learning every single day something new about myself, my team, knowledge, etc. And basically, I think it's just really, really important to recognize that nobody stops learning. It doesn't matter who you are. And I learn from people all the time. I don't learn from people at my level. I learn from staff that have just joined the company. I learn from junior clients. I learn from people in my daughter's hockey club, the cricket club. I like to learn from people all the time. Everybody's got a different style. Everybody has different strengths. Everybody has different ways of doing things. And I think that whole mindset around and learning and growth is paramount to success. Because I have never known a world, and I know I'm in my 50s, and obviously if I was in my 70s or 80s, it would be different, but I've never known a world as challenging as it is right now.
Yeah.
It's really, today's 20, 30-year-olds, especially those leaving university, they've grown up around everything being done online, the need for looking after oneself, mental health issue, all these things that in the 70s just weren't spoken about are now really open. So you've got very different behavior for different age groups of your staff. And so if I don't constantly learn, how on earth am I going to be relevant to not only what we do as a business, but to the people coming up through the ranks? And I also want to give back to those staff. I do a lot of training with very junior staff as well as my own team. And again, as I said, everybody in the organization's got different strengths that they will impart to either clients or to staff. It's really, really important that we learn from each other. And so we actually, interestingly, did an internal awards day last week. And everybody, irrespective of their position in the company, their level of hierarchy, or whether they're internal or external people, so even the ops and finance people, all got involved. We were all presenting, they were all generating ideas. And I think that I learn more from people day to day that aren't in my direct senior leadership team. I learn from everybody. It's really important.
I love that. you can learn from people from all walks of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
And
Yes, definitely.
yeah, Domenica, we're nearly out of time, but I just want to ask you one final question. And I'm going to challenge you to answer it in 1 or 2 sentences. What
Yeah.
advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh, wow. Somebody asked me that the other day. What advice would I give? There's a place for everybody in society, right? So what I mean by that is I'm leading a team and I have a lot of weaknesses, right? I have significant ADHD, and that is challenging. Challenging to not forget to do stuff, challenging to always have a to-do list, challenging because I'm always 1,000 miles an hour and forget what I was actually doing 5 minutes ago. And I always used to feel that I didn't belong, that, I did things very differently, and I'd always get great results, but that was not the way you're supposed to be. It was, I mean, especially university and, secondary education is very, very closed mindset, isn't it? So what advice I would give to my 20-year-old self, and I say this to my daughter, is that you are the best version of yourself and that your way of doing things is fine. You just have to learn what your strengths and weaknesses are. That's all. I wish I'd sat down and learned what my strengths and weaknesses were in my teens, because I would have known straight away there was no point working for somebody else. I'd have known straight away that I was going to run companies, and that actually the way I do it, that's fine. There are other ways of doing it, but it works for me, and it is me, and that I'll find my people. And in fact, the more businesses I've owned and run, the more I've found my people, because I find people like me, if that sort of makes sense. Whereas, you sit around a dinner party in your 20s and everybody's going off to doing the same careers where they're told what to do, and it's very dogmatic and it's very 9 to 5, and they're the ones that have been planning their retirement since they literally left university. Whereas the thought of retiring, no, thank you. So I would just say that learn what you're good at and what you're not, and just work in jobs or have a life that uses your strengths, not your weaknesses.
100%.
That simple.
If we could all learn that early on in life, it would
Wouldn't that
make
be brilliant?
such
Yeah,
a difference to everything.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of your insights today.
Pleasure.
I
Really,
have
really enjoyed
loved
today.
this. Really good conversation. And I
Thank you.
hope my audience has liked it as well. So this is Leading in the Modern Way video interview series. I hope you've enjoyed today. And if you would like to take part in this series, please do get in touch with me. Thanks. Bye.